this stuff. About ecology, we know that this is the study of ecosystems. And we can remember along the hierarchy of organization that it was like community or population, then community, then ecosystem. So it's like this is one of the orders if you think about it. But an ecosystem itself contains really two major parts. It contains the biotic components and then also the abiotic components, the living and the non-living. So maybe better written, we could say it's the study of organisms and their relations or relationship with the environment. To remind ourselves, so what's a population? Okay. Okay. A group of individuals of the same species that live in a certain area. Remember that this definition is actually based on the biological species concept. So from that we could generate a definition for population ecology, not just like what a population is, but what population ecology is. And we'll see that this studies the concept of individuals of the same species, but how the environment affects that distribution, how the environment affects that population. So, there's a focus on environmental factors. And how they determine the population dynamics. Kind of what's their distribution, what's their density, you know, how many are there, where are they at, you know, you could even get into the what is the allele frequency of this allele or of that other allele, so we can talk about some genetics too. And if you have several populations in the same area, what do you form? A what? A community. So let's talk real quickly about a community. A community is when you have a group of populations that live in a given area. My bad, I apologize. So then it would make sense that community ecology would be the study of what? So I heard someone say interactions between communities, between or within. A community. So to maybe work on putting this in perspective just a little bit, and I'll go back, don't worry, obviously I'm going to go back, I didn't stress that. When you look at population ecology, you're kind of looking at what's going on with that species in an area. You're focusing on like the zebra population that you have found in the African desert. Whereas, if you're talking about community ecology, you're more concerned with who's interacting with who. So community ecology is going to be about like commensalism, predation, competition, whereas population ecology is going to be more along the lines of how can this population get larger, how can it stay as small as it is, whatever the constraints are. And again, we've already studied what an ecosystem is, so if we're going to focus our efforts real quickly on ecosystem ecology, then we're going to be concerned about what are the dynamics, the constraints, if you will, that are experienced in that environment. We'll talk a lot about energy flow. Biotic, abiotic factors, a couple of other things, nutrient cycles. No. Cool. We okay with this concept? If you'll notice, that's kind of what we do in this chapter, is we basically take it apart by those pieces. Chapter 52 is over populations, 53 is over communities, and chapter 54 is over ecosystems. So those three levels of hierarchy is basically our focus for the next couple of days. Let's talk real quickly about abiotic factors and biotic factors. Okay. The term abiotic, of course, is going to refer to the stuff that's non-living, correct? So this is going to be non-living factors. Biotic is going to be living factors. Like, for instance, some examples of some non-living factors would be let's see, soil composition, rainfall, climate, nutrient distributions. All of those would affect or would be abiotic factors. Biotic factors, though, would be more like any competitions that may go on. Might also be the distribution of a neighboring species. A good one would be predation as well. So those are some biotic factors. And of course, there could be a connection between the two at any given time. And these are the two types of things that really dictate what's going on in an ecosystem. Again, that would make sense. They're kind of the only two things that an ecosystem is. The things that are living and the things that are not living. I'm really not going to worry too much about like wind patterns because I just don't see a major need for that. And I'll talk real quickly about biomes. Biomes that we experience. These are major ecological associations. That occupy broad geographic regions. Of both land and water. Okay. In your book, and this is in chapter 50, chapter 50 really does a good job of going over like your different biomes that are out there. Let's start off with maybe some of the aquatic biomes real quick. I think that might be just the best way to go about it. Obviously the two are different. In your marine environment, you have these two zones. This is the littoral zone as opposed to the limnetic zone. See, the limnetic zone is like basically water that extends deeper to the or lower levels. The littoral zone really only extends to maybe about 1,000. I think this is going to be measured in meters or so. So definitely there's no light here, but the reality is that in the limnetic zone, there's really not much life below that depth. This at the very bottom, this is called the abyssal zone. Actually, you know what? This should be called the intertidal. I'm thinking of a lake. It should be intertidal zone. Since this is an ocean, this should be oceanic zone. That's my fault. I apologize. Because this is the ocean. Okay. Let's see. Anything up here is going to be photic, which means that that's light penetrating zone. Anything below that, there's really no chance of any light at all, which means there's no photosynthesis. So there's no primary producers, which basically means that there would be like zero ability for life to extend below that depth. Well, there would be some life, but not much. I would say that's probably all you need to know, aside from the fact that anything below the photic zone is called the aphotic zone.
Are the measurements on the side important besides like the 1,000?
Do what?
Are the measurements on the side important besides like the 1,000?
The other ones really aren't important, no, because anything below 1,000 is going to be like zero light, and it's really zero light way before 1,000 meters, to be honest with you. But life could really extend to about that 1,000, and then below this, you get to like a population density or a species density or a biotic density. I guess just life itself is like not much going on at the bottom. Okay. In a lake, I'll get this right this time. This is called the littoral zone because this is a lake. I should probably write that. And this is the limnetic. This at the bottom is called the benthic zone. We'll talk about that in just a second. It's kind of actually really important. Still photic zone, and then the aphotic zone. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, it is a deep lake, actually.
What was that? What did you say in the box?
Benthic. Let's talk about that benthic zone real quick. What happens when like a little fish dies in the lake? Where does it go? Bottom. Okay, so we could say that there's going to be a lot of detritus. Does anyone know what detritus is? Yes. Dead stuff. The dead nasty stuff. Falls to the bottom of a lake. We say that that is well, is that going to be good or bad if you think about it?
Not good because it's like the nutrients that recycle.
Right, and so yeah, you have this small problem. You basically have all of your good nutrients at the bottom, and really not. I mean, the bacteria are going to break it up, but then you have all these nutrients that have settled literally to the ocean floor. And so we have to think about what would be the solution to that. Well, we know that over the course of an entire series of seasons, you're going to have this event that's called turnover, which is a semi-annual mixing of waters. So if you think about this is a lake. Wow, that's a really bad drawing. There's the littoral zone, and there's the limnetic. Maybe to put it in perspective just a little bit. Wow, I should just stop drawing now. These are supposed to be little waves, but so think about it. A lake shouldn't really have waves too much. So let's just say that there's a boat in here now. We're going to try to make it better. But a sailboat wouldn't make those waves, so I should put a big engine on it. So it's got a sail and an engine, which is now counterproductive. So basically this drawing doesn't make much sense. But what I'm trying to show you is that when things are dead, their nutrients end up on the bottom, right? Oh. Wait. Yeah, the littorals. This is the what do you call it? The shore, if you could say that. So there's your nutrients, and the way it's going to work out is your nutrients are going to have to get to the tip top, and of course when things die, their nutrients are going to fall to the bottom. So there's your turnover event. You take your nutrient-rich bottom and put it at the top, and the top goes to the bottom. And honestly, the reason that this happens is because of climate changes in temperature, factored in with the density of water. That's H2O. Those two events happening at the same time um, is the weather changes. You change the temperatures of both hot and cold, and therefore change the density. Make sense? About aquatic biomes, I guess to get back on task with this, I just want to write down your aquatic biomes. In chapter 50, there's this really nice 2 or 3 pages worth of pictures. It's like a little children's picture book of just all the different situations or environments that you could have, all these different ecosystems. And I would encourage you to become familiar with the ones that you're not familiar with. Like the rainforest one, you probably got that. Desert, probably got that. But like temperate rainforest or deciduous broadleaf forest, or what a wetland is, or what an estuary is, if there's any of those that are an issue, I suspect maybe you want to read them and maybe just focus on the picture, because the picture could really help you understand what organisms are there. We've already talked about, for aquatic biomes, lakes. There's of course oceans, and those are simple enough to understand. There's 2 types of lakes actually. There's oligotrophic, which basically means that it's going to be nutrient poor, but oxygen rich tons of oxygen. There's also eutrophic lakes. These are going to be nutrient rich, but are typically oxygen poor. So really, just kind of never win there. Let's see. I should mention the wetlands. Streams and rivers. These again are just types of environments. If you need to come back and add stuff to this, then I would say you could do so. Estuaries. Remember, an estuary is when you have a transition between a river and the sea. Coral reefs. Awesome. Let's see what else. Let's talk about land biomes. Okay, rainforest. That's one, of course. Desert. Savanna. Sorry. Chaparral. Temperate grassland. Tundra. And Savannah, don't forget to take your cooler.
Yeah.
And anyone else who has stuff in the back, I don't know if anyone else does have anything. Let's see. Broadleaf forests. Coniferous forest. Obviously, this implies you'd have tons of conifers, so there would be tons of gymnosperms. And I think that's going to be about it. If you think about really any kind of distribution and kind of the different factors between these, I mean, there's really just climate differences that exist between them. Now, the only thing I could say is that these guys have the potential to change when, like, El Nino comes around. They can change, which one they are, depending on, how, I guess, how vastly the climate changes. But also, You can also change these because of humans, and I would say that's more of a disturbance, or a type of disturbance. And all a disturbance is basically it's going to be the changing of a biome pattern. So basically when a system is changed up, possibly because of you, but a fire, any human activity, let's see what else, a massive storm, anything that's large scale like that can change a biome. Maybe for just a moment, for just a couple of years, or maybe more on a permanent scale. Like as we go through and we tear down those rainforests, I mean we are at that time really kind of messing up obviously that environment and probably changing it for the long term.
What kind of biome does it become then at that point?